cause and effect. Right. That's really what it is. So the Bria has to be.
I think you can do two different types of cause and effect: a continuous cause and one-time cause.
Yes, but here's what I mean. What he seems to be saying is this: that to cause something, but then continuously. So that is a relationship that he has with his Nevroim,
Right.
correct? But he could have created it as a cause. He would have brought me iron, right, and so on. And there would be no relationship between him and the Bria. But you see, what he seems to be saying is this, of course, then how would it exist? The thing is that, you see, when you have a cause and effect, there's a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And he says in the second concept, the concept of ha'ora and gilui, right? What is that different? Ha'ora is the ha'ora, or the hester of that ha'ora, really, right? Is when the cause is concealed from the effect. So you have a cause, right? But it connects to the effect as an effect. But the cause is now concealed, which later on will be revealed. So what that means is that the cause will ultimately be revealed, right? Because it is connected to the effect. Or what he could have done is created the Bria, and even though he would have been the cause, but that cause, or the Russian, insofar as the cause, would never be revealed to the Bria. But it would still need input, except the cause would never be revealed to the Bria, right? That cause would never be revealed because it wouldn't look continuous. There's no positive or negative. You see what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying. I don't think, it doesn't sound like what he's saying. He seems to be saying that he could have made it once and for all and left it, but then there would be no connection between him and us, which defeats his whole underlying ratzon.
But that doesn't mean, yes. Let me just see for a minute,
And the other thing is then, okay.
You left the vocation was according to your definition of what Hashem did over here. Why does Hashem need this world?
He doesn't.
He doesn't need this world. So why did he create it?
Not for himself.
But for who? Everything is himself. Everything is him.
No, it's Hatova. Because he wants to create a Bria and bestow on them an infinite state of well-being.
But if everything is Hashem, then the Bria is Hashem.
It's not everything. No. But true. However, we don't recognize that everything is Hashem. We see ourselves as distinct from Him. We see ourselves as Zulosai. We see ourselves, even though in reality we are not Zulosai, but we cannot penetrate that mystery. We are really not Zulosai, but we are Zulosai.
Hashem can take part of Kaviyachal himself and create it as a mufresh.
Well,
from himself.
That's the concept.
That's what you're saying.
Hebdel.
He's able to take part of himself and create it as a mufresh.
Yes.
And give it pleasure.
Well, and that it thinks it exists independently.
Now, what did Hashem do until that point? I mean, all of a sudden he decided,
No, that's a question you can't ask.
You can't ask. He's been around. Hashem has been around. I mean, all of a sudden
He's eternal.
He had mitzvah,
You can't ask that. What did he do before he created the Bria?
Because we know that the Bria is only a finite amount of years. It's only 5,000. And Hashem existed forever.
So what did he do for all that?
So what did he do all that time?
As they say.
Can we understand what he did all that time?
No.
There was no time.
There was no time.
Yeah.
Right? So what is he?
What that time?
It's not like he got bored all of a sudden. I got to do something.
And there's no you to understand it.
There's no way to understand it.
So
we do not understand his circumstances.
Yeah.
So how can we possibly know what he does in his spare time? What does a Russian do for enjoyment? We don't know. There's no such thing as enjoyment to him. This is what's called
He's a Muslim. Everything is perfect.
He's a Muslim, but it's not.
So why? What's up? This oils gefilt to make a tavuk for the Bria.
We don't know.
That's as if it's something like
we do not know. Is there a drink here, by the way? Yeah. Great.
It's Pesach Sheni tonight.
I know. It's a Pesach Sheni.
Nee, niet de grondpester. Gewoon.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Should we start? It's recording already, so
What?
we can start. It's recording already, so we can start.
yeah.
I think we should start with the bracha. Want to place this to the rabbi?
No, no,
Or do you want the cinnamon instead?
stay with the cards.
I'll make sure.
Anyway, okay.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam v'adim zaynis.
That's okay. Anyway, so we reached a certain conclusion last week. That when the Ramchal says that all we know, but the only one who knows who the devotion is himself. That's number one. And that concept of that he is the only one who knows who he is. That concept is absolute, which means there is nobody else that knows who he is. That's an absolute concept. Okay, nobody knows who he is, where he is, what he is. Nobody has any inkling as to who the Moshem is, what his essential nature is. Okay, so he's a being that is devoid of any description, as far as we're concerned. That's a very important idea, a being that is devoid of any description. Now, is that dye, by the way? You have any dye?
What? I can't find it in the car. I'm not sure where it is. I must have left it in the shop.
It's all sugar.
But here's seltzer. I'll get darts to my house. I'm gonna go run home. Okay, pass this out.
Yeah, it's okay.
So up in front.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Because actually, can you pass a little of the orange down? So it just as a flavor. So last week we ended off with a very important idea. You know? Fucking drawer. That the only type of being that can be perfect, the only type of being in which we could say is a perfect being. Remember what perfection is? It is perfection is a what's called an accident. Perfection of what? So perfection means the totality of whatever can be. That's what it means to be perfect. It means whatever shaykh to be, whatever existence can yield, you got all of it. That's perfection. Because there's nothing else, right? Because existence doesn't have any more to give you. So clearly, therefore, that's perfection. So the only type of being that can be perfect is a being that is existence itself. Somebody that doesn't have metzias, but somebody that is metzias itself. A being, and we don't know what that means. We know what being is or existence because we see things exist, but we don't know what that quality is at all. We have no idea what the quality of existence really is, or the quality that it's called existence. We have no idea of what that means. So our first foray, if you want to use that word, is the fact that we really don't know the Rebbeinu of who he is. Because we do not know what existence in and of itself is without something else to adhere in. Normally, how do we know existence is? Because we see a thing and we know that it exists. But we don't know the quality that makes it be. We don't know what that means even, and so on. But we do know one thing, that if a being is existence itself, then it has to be perfect. There are many things that flow from that, right? Obviously, something which is being in itself knows everything because it gave rise to everything, right? It's omnipotent, it can do anything because from itself it can make anything be. It's all over because any place that it is not there doesn't exist because it's not there. It needs to give existence to everything. So therefore it's omnipotent, omniscient, and it is omnipresent. That type of being also, okay, is mucher chametzias. It must exist because it is. You can't take it away. We who have existence, it can be taken away from us, and therefore we become annihilated. But a being that is existence, right, you can't take it away because that's what it is. It is. So therefore, the Rebbeinu must be the concept of mucher chametzias. Clearly, the Rebbeinu is well, we'll get into that. But anyway, and that's why the Rebbeinu name is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which comes from the verb liyos, to be. Why would we call anybody a being? Being. What kind of name is that? But if the etzem, or the essence of the being, is being, so it comes from the word liyos. You see, and therefore the Rebbeinu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, what do they call you? So Rebbeinu, of course, answers, I am, or I will be what I be, that's the drasha. But I am, and I mentioned that English uses the verb am, or existence. I am walking. I am means I exist, and I'm walking. So the Rebbeinu is the am of the, in the sentence called I am walking, he is the am, and we're the one who walks. You see, so therefore, words and terms that refer to existence really refer to the Rebbeinu.
Why do we have to say necessarily that it's perfect? Maybe you can exist without being perfect.
No, you don't. No, you don't exist. If you are existence, you are perfect.
Why?
Because existence means you can do anything you want. It means whatever is, will be, can be, is within you as a totality. More than that, it can't be because there's nobody else to give anything more existence because it's just you.
You mean in the concept of existence, you're perfect?
Yes, got
In
it.
the concept of existence.
Yes, if you are existence, you're perfect. Because more of anything does not exist outside of you because what would give it existence? It's only from you. So you determine
As
how much
perfect,
there is.
As perfect as something can be, it's existence.
It's existence,
Okay.
that's right. Yes. So we see that this idea that the Rasham is etzem metzius, metzius be'etzem, really answers many, many different things. It answers also why nobody can know who he is, because everything else has existence, they have essential characteristics. The essential characteristics of God is being. That is the essential characteristic. We have existence and therefore we have many things that exist. You know, we have physical bodies and so on. Remember, in every single object in the universe you can separate it into its characteristics and also into its existence, that it is. You could separate the two, you see. But the essence of God is being itself. That is his essence. And therefore he takes on the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Anyway, that's what we arrived at last week.
With the term existence, I'm thinking in terms of creation, the tangible. But now it dawned on me, what about a spiritual location? Gehenna, Gan Eden, is that also to be capsulized when you use the term existence?
No,
And where do they exist?
Gehenna is a thing. God isn't a thing. God is being that gives rise to things. Maybe that's a better way of saying it.
So spiritual location
Is a thing.
Is
Something.
is a component of existence as we're using the term?
It's not a component. Existence allows spiritual dimensions to exist.
Okay.
A
In
thing.
addition to the physical.
Oh, yeah.
What precludes us from
There are
saying
two
that God is a
fundamental
thing?
dimensions of reality. Actually, there are three, but we certainly recognize two. The Moshe created a spiritual domain. We don't know what spiritual domain really means. We know that it's not physical. But we do not know what a spiritual domain is. It is beyond description. Nobody knows what a malach looks like. If a malach has to appear to you, it will assume a physical garb or guise, like by Avraham Avinu, or it will assume something like Eliyahu Novi. If it wants to appear to you, It's got to appear to you as something that can be perceived by the senses.
But a malach is a thing too, right?
It's a thing, it's a spiritual
So
thing.
what precludes us from saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a thing?
No, I'm saying he's not a thing. He
What,
is,
what forces us to say that he's
because
not a
I
thing?
told you, because that's what perfection, the only type of being that can be perfect is that.
Is something that's not a thing.
That's not a thing, but is the
But has-
is the
but
being
creates
of all
the things.
things. It is the being of all things. Yes, that's the only thing that can be perfect. That's why. That's why I
a
told
thing
you.
cannot be perfect?
No thing is perfect because everything is limited. In that sense, a thing cannot be perfect. No.
It's not shaykh that a thing should be unlimited?
You know, a thing could be infinite. Actually, it could be.
So what forces us to say that the Rebbe Hashem has no tzura?
But it is certainly, there's a difference, you know, there's a difference between infinities. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No.
There was a guy named Cantor, Jewish. He invented the mathematics of infinity. It's all mathematics, by the way. And he actually said that infinities are different. The infinity of numbers, for instance, is different, let's say, than the infinity of space or whatever. Infinities are different. I'm not a mathematician, so I'm not even pretend, you know, and so on. But infinities are not all the same. You know, the infinity of a being that is existence itself is vastly different than a finite being that goes on forever. Think about that. What is the infinity of, let's say, time? Time is really discrete units, and that goes on forever. So if something goes on forever, we could say it's infinite. Numbers, for instance, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goes on forever. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are finite numbers. Yet it goes on forever. So what really, infinity is really that which is finite that has no end, right? But it's not infinite in and of itself. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm getting into the concept, but the infinity of being that is existence is different than the infinity of a being that's finite but endless. You see what I'm saying? We are finite, but certain aspects can be endless. Time is endless, but it's finite. There's a finite amount of things that are endless. That's not the same as saying a being that is existence itself is infinite. Different concept. Anyway, so therefore, that's what I'm saying. From Beis in Ramchal, we derive this conclusion that he says, you know, nobody knows who God is except He. And only this we know, that He's a Motzoi Sholem, B'chol Mina Shlemus, V'leinim Tzuri Chesron Klal. So in our language, it means one, that He has no limits. God has no limits. He has no dependencies. He's not dependent on anything else. And He has no deficiencies within Him. So what I'm saying is that the only type of being, well, who can qualify? Who's a candidate for that type of a being? Only a being that is existence itself. And we do not know what that means. We've never met a being that is pure existence. No such thing. We've met things that have existence, but no such thing have we ever met that's pure existence. We don't know. Nobody can know. Because nobody has that. Everybody has it. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point. Anyway, so that's number one. That's a very, very important idea. Now the Ramchal says that these things, which is really your question, how do we know these things to be true? And the answer is, that was the Kabbalah. This is the tradition or the Mesiris from Har Sinai. You see. What does that mean? For instance, where do you see that? Okay. Now we also know, which we'll see, that it says, At Horei Soladas, you have been shown that you may know. Ki Hashem hu Elokim, the Hashem is Elokim, right? Einod Milvadoi. Besides God, there's nothing else. What you see from here, okay, and this was, who's saying, Moshe Rabbeinu is saying this, that at Matan Torah, this was the Gilui. Right? So Rashi says that what the Hashem did is he opened up the heavens And he showed everybody, Shehu Yechuda Shel Olam. He is the one of the world, you see. So somehow in that comprehension, that he is the one of the world, okay, that Eino Lovadoi, whatever, okay, in that comprehension is the Kabbalah, that the Baruch is this. That's what we saw at Har Sinai. Har Sinai is not merely the Gila of the Torah. That's a mistake. That's what you think would happen. Of course there was the Torah, okay? But what is the Torah? Does anybody know what the Torah really is? What is the Torah really?
The blueprint of creation.
Yes, it's the blueprint of creation, clearly. But you need more than that. What does a blueprint of creation mean?
Before the Ramchal created the world, he looked in the Torah.
Yeah, that's the Medrash. But there's something more profound than that.
The Tachlis of Bria?
That's a thing that the blueprint has.
The reason the Yatre
What
of the
is-
Bria?
no.
The reason for the Bria?
Yes, no, that's not. What's the uniqueness about a blueprint? Pray tell. If I have a blueprint of a building, what is the uniqueness of having a blueprint?
Gives you the structure of everything.
What?
Gives you the structure of everything.
Exactly. Everything in that building must be contained in this blueprint, in this architectural design. Yes? Okay. What is everything of the Bria ultimately?
The extension of the Ramchal.
Yes, in a certain way, yes. But the blueprint of the Bria really is the totality of the acts of God. The totality of all his acts mitzad this dimension. The Torah is nothing more than a document that describes the totality of the acts of the Baruch in terms of this Bria. That's what the Torah really is.
But a blueprint, by definition, is the plan before the act.
I'm not talking about its sequence. You don't get caught up in which comes first. I'm not into what's first, right? Put that aside. I'm talking about what is. The blueprint of anything is the totality of that which it's describing or creating or whatever you want to say. That's what a blueprint is. Therefore, what the Torah really is the blueprint of the Bria. That means it has the totality of everything that is. But besides that, it has another totality, which is more profound than everything that is. Think about that. Because everything that is what? Is an act of God, is it not? Therefore, the totality of the acts of the Maas Elokim, right, is the Torah. So the Torah really is a document that describes the totality of the acts of the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's a very important idea. And therefore, the totality of the Rebbeinu Shalom obviously is everything that is. You see, but you have to go more previous. So therefore, that's what the Torah is. Now, but is the Torah the totality of everything God ever did? No. Not at all. The Baruch created a Bria. And within that Bria, or that Bria is a totality of acts. Right? But there are things that the Baruch could have done which is not part of the Bria. Maybe it's another Bria, you see. So the Torah is not a description of the total acts of the Baruch at all. It's only the description of the total acts of the Baruch mitzad this creation, which is a set. That's all it is. More than that, we don't know. We have no idea, as we will see, of what the Baruch did, as we will see. Because there could be an infinite amount of Brias. We don't know any of them, besides one.
How do you define our Bria?
A Bria is a creation.
What is our Bria? The Bria that
It's not about what it is.
What-
No. It's a good question. But whatever our Bria is, I'm not going into what the essential idea of the Bria is. But the Bria is a totality in and of itself. It's a complete, let's say, world of itself.
The
Whatever
whole
that
Milky
contains.
Way is the Bria, the whole
Everything.
solar system, the whole universe,
No.
the entire infinity. What is the Bria?
The totality of the Bria is the entire physical universe plus the entire spiritual universe. That is the totality.
Which is infinite almost.
I don't care if it's infinite. That's a different issue. You need to stick to the concept. The totality of everything that God made the spiritual domain, and the physical domain is the Bria. As far as we know. There is no other type of existence. You're either spiritual or you are physical. That's it. Anything else, any other type of Bria that is composed of different types of material, we have no idea. We don't know. Anyway, so the Ramchal says that we know this from the Kabbalah. This is our Messiah from Sinai, right? We know it from the Ovis, we know it from the Nevi'im, right? And he says, V'hisikum, all Kol Yisrael b'Maiman HaSinai. And all Klal Yisrael, and this was the Yesod of the Gilui, that they were massing this idea, right? And then they were massing the architectural plan, which is basically the description of the total acts of the Roshna. And ve'omdo amitosim beberu. What does that mean? And they knew it with clarity. Okay? What Ramchal says is something very interesting. You know, there's a branch of philosophy called epistemology. For those who know philosophy. What is epistemology?
How you know things.
Oh?
How you know things.
Well,
Knowledge, actually.
well, the validity of the information is really what it is. What it is that, how do we know that that which we know is true? How do you know? For instance, you're all looking at me, I hope. You're all listening to me, I really hope, right? But, you know, I don't know what you really see. I look at you, right? Let's say we both of us look at the wall. Now, I don't know if you're seeing the same thing I am. I have no idea what's in your brain. Your brain, that wall, the light ray hits that wall, it bounces off the wall and goes into your retina. The retina forms electrical signals and that hits your brain. Your brain interprets that, or it actually converts electrical signals into some type of an image, which is mind-boggling. So therefore, do you and I actually see the same image? We think we do, but do we really? We don't know. So what epistemology says, it's a branch of philosophy that says that, you know, how do we know that that which we know is valid? We don't really know. And there are all kinds of arguments and debates. You know, that which we know, how do we really know is valid, is true? Certainly we know that what I see and what you see, it's subjective. We don't even know if we're looking at the same reality. We think we are, you know what I'm saying? But we don't really know. Unless I have your brain, I don't know, I have no idea what your image is of that wall. You see what I'm saying? So really reality is subjective, totally subjective, you know. But okay, we have to work with each other in that sense because or else forget
If we
about
would
it.
all write a description of what you look like, most of us would come to a consensus.
Yes,
So
but
the-
we don't know if
there
that's
is
what
a-
you see.
so
You don't understand something, but what you see, you know, we'll come to consensus, but we don't know if what you see is the same as what the other guy sees. I have no idea what your image of me is. You know what I'm saying? It may be different than somebody else's image, but somehow there's a consensus in the sense of, you know, without getting too complicated, whatever. And not only that, but what's even more chashuv, not only do we not know of what we see, is it real, in the sense, is it true, in terms of, is that really what's out there? Not only do, so notice, here's what we don't know. I don't know if you and I see the same thing. We see the same thing, but I don't know if it's the same image in your mind. You see? That's number one. Number two, you don't really know what's out there. Wait, you know, if I go like this, I don't know what I don't know what's here. I have an image of what's here, but I don't really know what's out there, really, because my interpretation of this thing is an image in my brain. Does my image in my brain correspond to this, really? We don't know. Because we are limited to knowing reality through our brains, right? So is what I see really out there as what I see? So not only do I not know if you and I see the same thing, we don't even know if what we see is really out there the way we see it. Because it's all interpretations of the brain. Got it? And not only that, I'm just showing you when you really think about it, you know, you want to get into this, you know. Not only that, for instance, you know, I know we know that everything, for instance, how do I know the sun will rise tomorrow? We don't really know it. We only know it because historically it's written every day, right? But what makes the sun rise? We don't know. In other words, what makes a physical law? It's like we say, okay, if an atom spins one way, because atoms spin, then somehow a matter will have a certain property. But if the atom spins another way, it'll have a different property, whatever the property is, right? Question is why? What does spinning of one way have to do with a property, and what does spinning the other way have to do with that property? There's no logical connection. There are statistical connections, because we know if it spins one way, right, then the thing is hard. If it spins another way, then the thing is soft. But what does spinning one way or spinning another way have to do with hard or soft? We don't know. We don't see the intrinsic connections in reality at all. That's why all science is really statistical. Because nobody knows is it mukhrach? If the atom spins one way, it's mukhrach that this must occur? No, because we don't see the connection
We
at
understand
all.
the rule, you're saying.
We understand it as a rule because statistically it's always happened that way. You see? But we don't know why. We don't know why this happens because of this. It seems like arbitrary. We know that statistically, whenever they've measured, they've always found that when it spins this way it's hard, and when it spins down, but that's a statistical idea. I'm just showing you, if you think you know what's out there, you don't. At all. Why? Because we are disconnected from reality. You see. So the interesting thing about the Ramchal, how does he know I'm giving a shiur? How does he know that? Is he a Novi? Is God a prophet? No, he's not a prophet, right? So it's an interesting question. How does he know that I'm giving a shiur? Does he see me? Does God see us? Really? No. He has no eyes. Does God have sight? I wouldn't have any idea. I mean, it says in the Chumash that the Ramchal saw, but that's because it's anthropomorphic, means that he has to describe our way we do it. But the Ramchal doesn't see anything, he doesn't hear anything. The Ramchal doesn't know anything the way we do it. So now how does he know? And the answer is, because we exist in him. God knows us because he knows himself. See, the Ramchal is not disconnected from reality. He is reality. In other words, is reality part of God or is God part of reality? Which is it?
Neither.
Right?
Neither.
Reality is part of God. Exactly. God is not part of reality. There's no such thing as a reality in which he's part of. No. He is reality and everything is part of him. So the reason why the Ramchal knows everything that's going on is because he is everything that's going on, in whatever sense that means. You see what I'm saying? He doesn't see me, doesn't hear me, you know what I'm saying? But I'm in him.
How do you know he doesn't see you? How do you know he doesn't hear you?
He
I
doesn't.
mean, if he created seeing, he created hearing, so he sees you. He
But you're not
hears you.
listening, you have to hear the vort. What was my vort?
That it's part of him. Everything is part of him.
Therefore he doesn't know me because...
So seeing is part of him too.
No,
Hearing is part of him.
no. If I see you, it's because you're disconnected. I need to have the light ray bounce off you to hit my eye, or else you're disconnected. But if I'm you, then I don't need to any external stimulation. I know you are because I'm you. How do you know you are, really?
I
You
know I
experience
have a heart.
yourself.
I know I have a heart.
That's because...
But I wish I could see my heart. The Rebbe Hashem sees everything too. My heart is part of
Listen.
me, but you know, it does mean that seeing would be more detached.
You're not getting it. Listen. Again, we are disconnected from reality. Therefore, I need to use light waves and brains and all that in order to interpret what's not me. What I'm saying is that we are in many ways identical, or him, not really, but in a certain sense we all emanate from him, and therefore we are really part of him. Chelik lekanimal, mamish, right? And therefore the Ramchal knows us because he knows himself. We're not disconnected from that he's got to look at us as if we're out there and he needs some type of instrument to tell him we're out there. It's a very important idea, and that's number one. Now, here's the problem. When a Novi had a nevuah, right? Yechezkel, or any of the Nevi'im, right? All of a sudden, they have a nevuah, right? They have a prophecy. What is nevuah, really? What nevuah is, without going into the whole thing, is simply with the imagination. The brain has a faculty called the intellect, but it has many faculties. It can reason, we can remember, right? We have many koiches. Dimyan is one, seichel is another, zikaron is another. One of the faculties that the brain has is that we imagine. You shut your eyes for a minute, you can actually see a picture of what you looked at before you shut your eyes. What does that? How in the world do you create a picture in your mind? That's called the imagination. It's called the dimyan. Okay? It's called the imagination. That's one of the faculties. What nevuah is two things, is that all of a sudden the imagination of the prophet actually sees an image that's imprinted on his imagination. Like a movie. It's there, and he's mamish watching a movie. And the interesting thing about it is that the imagination, he has no control over his imagination. It's like something takes over his imagination and projects images. That's part of the nevuah. That's the mareh that a Novi sees. When, for instance, let's say Yeshaya saw the Bosham riding on a horse, dressed in red. These are a tremendous amount of pictures. What was he seeing? He didn't see the Bosham riding on a horse, but all of a sudden, his imagination conjured up an image of that. But besides that, besides seeing the image, the Novi also understood the image without any problem of epistemology. In other words, for instance, you could walk over to a Novi and say, how'd you know you weren't dreaming? Some dreams are really vivid. You know what I'm saying? How'd you know? So the Rambam says that part of the nevuah is not only seeing an image, one, and not only an insight, intellectual insight about what the image represents, number two, right? But there's something else that occurred in nevuah of which we cannot understand. The Novi knew that the image he was seeing was real, and it wasn't a dream. There was something in the image itself that crossed the boundary of Suffolk. In other words, he knew this was real and not a dream. And in other words, he knew the real reality of what he was seeing. Like like, I don't know, I don't know what's out there. I mean, to me it looks red or whatever. It feels hard because my hand stops here. So clearly there's some type of boundary. But I have no idea what's out there really, except what my brain tells me is out there, whatever image is produced. You see. Well, you're looking at me, what are you looking at? You're looking at an image in your brain. You're not looking at me. You don't realize that, you look at me, right? You don't realize you have an image in your brain of me. It's all mental. That's how disconnected we are with reality. You see. But the Novi somehow understood. He really knew the reality that he was seeing. So in other words, he crossed the boundary of Suffolk in Metzius. Only a Novi could do that. That was part of the Nevuah. Why? Because a Novi, in other words, there was a certainty of what he was seeing. The reality of what he was seeing was certain. Not like we, Yeah, until now you all thought everything was certain, but it's not true. I've just shown you that there are three major sphakes in what we are. I don't even know if you and I see the same thing, right? Not only that, I don't know if you and I see what's out there at all, and I don't even know what the connection between anything is. We don't really know, it's all mental images. But the Nomi didn't have that problem. In other words, there was an epistemological solution to his image. And the Rambam says, we have no idea what that is. We don't know how he pulled it off. We don't know. But the Nevuah had to have that, or else he would always be uncertain. Some guy can walk over to Noah and says, you got a vivid imagination. He says, you don't really know what's out there. You know? So, in other words, the problem that philosophy presents, that how do we know things are true, was not true by the Navi. That's what he means. V'omdu amitosim beberur. Berur means not only they saw clearly, but they didn't have the epistemological issue. How do we know what we see is true, or really out there, or that we all see the same thing? That's what he means by Berur. Because Klal Yisrael at Matan Torah, what were they? They were Nevi'im. You don't realize that. Not only that, do you know, in order for the first two mitzvahs, most people don't realize that, but the first two mitzvahs were given by who?
Rebbeinu Shalom.
No, were given by who? By the Rebbeinu Shalom. That doesn't make sense because the Rebbeinu Shalom gave all Tariq mitzvahs. But
It was
who was
sent
the
by
one?
Rebbeinu Shalom.
Yes. Who was the one who received them? The
That's Klal
two.
Yisrael.
Oh, but wait a minute. Wait a minute. That's very interesting. All 611 commandments were received by Moshe Rabbeinu and then transmitted to us. Yes? But the first two mitzvahs were given by the Rebbeinu Shalom to the entire Jewish people. But wait a minute. You realize what that means? In order to be makabel the Torah from the Rebbeinu Shalom, not from an emtsoi, like Moshe Rabbeinu, right? You need to have the greatest darga of all of Nevuah. Why? Because remember, the difference between Nevi'im was epistemological in a certain sense. It means one Navi was clearer than another Navi, although they knew what they saw, but it was more blurred, vague, you see. But Torah cannot be given to a person in any darg of Nevuah that's below the greatest of all. Why? Because Torah must be certain. If there's any suffix in Torah, it's bad news. So that's why Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest Navi of all time, called the Aspaklaya Me'ira. When Moshe Rabbeinu took a look, he saw, he had the greatest understanding of what is real than any human being who ever lived. Why? Because he was being Makabel the Torah. And you cannot have Makabel the Torah with any degree of uncertainty. Now, if that's the case, we know Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest Navi, right? Why? Because it had to be the greatest Navi. Because somebody who's Makabel the Torah must be the greatest Navi of all. Or else the Torah is uncertain because of our problem. So if that's the case, if all Klal Yisrael what? Was Makabel the first two mitzvahs, not through Moshe Rabbeinu, ergo, which means, therefore, everybody in Klal Yisrael was the greatest Navi, was equal to the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. What it means? Which is incredible. That means there was a time in the history of Klal Yisrael that every Jew was equal in capacity and potential and actuality to the Nevuah of Moshe, because they were given this Nevuah. They were given the Torah through them and not through Moshe, which is astounding. That's what it means, beberur. Oh, it doesn't beberur, amitosam. They knew claw the emes, the truth they knew. Because they had the greatest darga of all, the darga of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah, after those two, they lost it. Because they came running, everybody died. It's a whole problem. Why did Moshe do it? Because he knew they would die. Okay, that's a problem, whatever, right? But they came running back to Moshe and said, we can't handle this. Forget it. You be the transmitter. You be the emtsoi, the intermediary. Fine. So therefore, that darga was removed. But the truth is, that's how. So therefore, everybody in Klal Yisrael became two things. It is very important. Every Jew that stood in front of Har Sinai, and all the neshamas, I'm not going to include them also, right? Were eyewitnesses to this event. Very important. Come to chois, that normally there's an eyewitness and then he tells somebody else, right? It comes out that the entire Jewish people, all of them were eyewitnesses to Ma'anan Har Sinai. You see. So what the Baruch did is he created 2.5 million eyewitnesses to an event, independent of Moshe Rabbeinu. because then Moshe Rabbeinu would have been the eyewitness, and everybody else would have been the ABP8. No. The Hashem created, everybody was an eyewitness, and the second thing is that the level of witness was of the darg of Moshe Rabbeinu. Wow. You can't, a noilod or a nivra cannot go higher than that. That's it. That's what it means, amitosim beberur. That was what Maimon Har Sinai was. And what was the gilui? The gilui was shehu yichudi shel olam. The Jews understood clearly at the darg of Moshe Rabbeinu, ein oid milvadoi. There is nothing else but God, as we will see. Nothing. He's the only thing that exists even after the Bria. Clearly, to the level that we do exist, it's only what? We are in Him. That's how it is. Okay? So that they were all maseh. And what did they do? V'limdum b'bneihem duachador kayom hazeh. And therefore, 2.5 million eyewitnesses told each one of their kids. By the way, I saw this. Shkoyach. Yeah, I'd love to have some of that.
Some icy.
Thanks. Yeah.
And they say all the neshamas were Har Sinai,
Yes.
including ours. Well, we have that same experience as the 2.5 million.
Who?
We-
Say again?
When they
Yes,
say all
yeah.
neshamas were Har
They would have
Sinai.
had it, yes, correct. Except they're the neshamas, you can't, they're not talking to anybody. But they would have had the same giloi. But the
All of
interesting,
us in here.
yeah, but what's interesting is that their giloi, they would have been greater than us because they're eyewitnesses without. We are eyewitnesses to what? We don't see the ruchnias. They are ruchnias. The shamas are ruchnias. So they don't need to be told of a spiritual universe. But the gilui of who the Bonsham is, that was Nizgala. Yes. That is true. That was Nizgala. Yes. So we see some incredible things. So therefore, each Jew says to his son, by the way, I am an eyewitness. I was there. I was a prophet of the greatest magnitude. And this is what I saw. So the son was now ABPA. Then the son told his child, by the way, let's say 2 generations later, the father would tell the son, my father told me that his father told him, that his father told him that he was there. You see? So it's true. So what the Moshe did is an incredible thing. Instead of all religions are what? One guy has this revelation, so to speak. Right? And then he says, I had the revelation, and now all of you guys believe me. With the Jewish people, it's the whole Klal Yisrael were the transmitters of the revelation. Each Jew said, my father, my father, my father. I don't care what the rest of the Jews say. It was each Jew is an independent transmission, independent of any other Jew. There is no religion in this planet that has such a origin of Gilui, where the whole nation is each one is an eyewitness that does not have to rely on any other eyewitness. All other religions do, and that's what's wrong with all religions. You know, like when you talk about, for instance, Muhammad with Islam, you know, I'm not going to go into all the nonsense, but he says that I had a revelation, right? We didn't have any revelation, right? So he's got to tell everybody after him, okay, you got to believe me. Of course, he threatened his sword. You don't believe me, I kill you. That's a new motivation. And so on, right? He motivated everybody very highly, and so on. But forget about the motivation. Hey, where's the proof? You say, how do I know what you're doing? You may be hallucinating. What do I know what you're doing? Hallucinating, you know, guys have wild imagination. Who knows, maybe you had a seizure and you had an image. I mean, because you said something, I have to predicate my life on what you think is true? Nonsense. That's why you have to be out of your mind to believe any religion. Because one guy says he had a gilui, therefore I'm going to live my life based on one man's opinion, or one man's insight, or one man's vision. Of course, that's absurd. And that's why the Moshe did this. Because the Moshe knows, well, excuse me, if the Moshe had done this only to Klal, or the Moshe Rabbeinu, if he would have been the gilui of the Torah, totally. So a guy could say, hey, look, in the end, don't blame me. Why should I live my whole life based on the visions of one man? Maybe he's hallucinating. Maybe a guy's psychotic. Or maybe, I don't know what his motive is making this stuff up. Who knows? Therefore, the Moshe knew that in order to validate Torah as a true instruction manual from God, he needs to make everybody an eyewitness. You see. And even that you could say, but at least you have 2.5 million eyewitnesses. That's why Maimon Har Sinai was critical, was necessary. Because everybody can have an excuse and say, but I didn't talk to anybody, because you say you had a vision. Okay, you're a great man, but who are you? I don't know, maybe you're depressed that day. And that day you were having, hallucination, auditory, visual, who knows what you're having, You can't base truth. Look, you go to Beston. You can't base it on one man. 2 people. So you figure 2 people having the same hallucination is pretty rare. Usually 2 people don't have the exact same hallucination. And not in Chazal, there was a Kedrish and Chakira. They had a shtim. It's very hard for 2 people to hallucinate the exact same thing, if it's not true. So the Torah says you need at least 2. But 1? No such thing. Apishnei Edom Yokem Dova, including the Torah. You see? So what the Baruch did is even better. He had 2.5 million people. Very important idea. That's the real basis of the emes of Torah. Is that we have millions of witnesses, and each one transmitted this testimony to their generations independently of anybody else. You see? And then of course, when they talk to the next guy, he says, my father told me that his father told me that his father said he was there, right? And you would agree. Not because I said it, because your father told your father. You see, each guy had his own line straight to Maimon Har Sinai. That's pretty rock solid. As far as things go. It's pretty rock solid. Anyway. But that's what he means by Amitas Beberur. What do you mean Amitas Beberur? That's what it means, that they were all Nevi'im of the highest darga, So there was no epistemological problem that we all have. There are philosophers that said we don't really know what's out there. There's a huge area called epistemology, you see. And people argue about what's out there all the time, and so on. So that's what he means, Bebero. And therefore, Limdim Lem Doach Hazeh Kiyom Hazeh, you see, what was it? Shekain Tziva Moshe Rabbeinu Avashal Mibnei B'Piyat Gvura. So each person testified, once they knew this, that what Moshe Rabbeinu is transmitting is real. And they, as it says, V'datum V'necho V'Vevonecho. But the Ramchal also says, Omni Mitzad HaChakir Moshe Malimudim, but even Mitzad proofs. You can actually prove a lot of these things through what's called logical proofs. And you can and you can prove that they're so based on the fact of, based upon what we see also, and based on Chochmas HaTeva, which is science, Handosa, which is probably mathematics. Tchuna, I think, Tchuna is mathematics, Handosa is really engineering. Geometry probably, yeah. Ushor Chochmas, yeah. And from them, using the logical proofs of science or whatever, you can actually come to a lot of these ideas. But I'm not going to go into it because the Ramchal does not go into proofs, which is very interesting. He doesn't bother. Prove it. He just says what it is. That's what he tells you. Based on the Messiah. Okay? Now, the Ramchal also now is going to go into the different properties of the Moshe, which I had mentioned. Okay? But there's certain things that you need to understand, and Ramchal is going to cover that, and you see it. What we say, Gimel Oitzor Shieda, Shamot Azer Zbok Shmo, Hine Metzius Metzius Muchroch, She'i Ef Shei Ha'odrei Klal. That's what I told you. The Baruch Shem has a property that his non-existence is non-existent. The Baruch Shem cannot not be. It's impossible. It's not that, remember I asked you, well, the Baruch Shem exists, boy, is he lucky that he is. Because what happens if he wasn't? You know? So then you know what I'm saying? So you could say he's lucky, you know? Like I asked you, the Baruch Shem is one. Is that by luck? Or there's something about him that must be one. There cannot be two beings that have the same nature of the Baruch Shem. So now he's talking about Muchach HaMetzius, you see. That what? No, it is impossible for God not to exist. And we see why. Because existence, in and of itself, cannot not be. It is. It's a phenomenon that is. It cannot annihilate itself. Existence can't annihilate itself. It is. Whatever that is. So that would be Muchach HaMetzius. A being that is existence itself would be of necessity, must be. That which has existence, it can be taken away. Because it is not existence, it has it. You know, if you have some, I can take your tie away, right? Because you're not the tie. But if you were the tie and I took the tie away, who would I be taking away? You. You understand what I'm saying? If you take existence away, all you're doing is taking the Rebbeinu Shem away. Because that existence itself is a real being. The Rebbeinu Shem. So he says that in Gimel. But we have an understanding of that once you understand that he is existence. Okay? In Dalet he says, Einoi tolu b'zulosei klal, ele me'atzai muchach HaMetzius. The Baruch Shem is not dependent. That's the concept of dependent. The Baruch Shem is not dependent on any being for his existence. You might say there are two types of beings. There's a substantial being and an accidental being. It's called an etzem and a mikra. It's more in Nevuchim and many Sfam. And for instance, the table is an etzem, but shape is an accidental. Because shape doesn't exist in itself, it needs something else to exist in. Something has to have a shape. But what is shape? The shape, did you ever see shape walking by itself without something to shape in? No. A being that is accidental, mikra, means that it needs something else to exist in. It cannot exist by itself. So therefore it is dependent on an etzem, size, shape, color. All of these things are called mikra, or accidental beings. Does the Rebbeinu Shem, even if he's an etzem, does he need something else to exist in? No. Does the Rebbeinu Shem need a cause? No. Because if he needed a cause, then he would be dependent on something to have caused him. So the Rebbeinu Shem not only doesn't need to exist in anything, but the Rebbeinu Shem doesn't even need a cause. The Rebbeinu Shem is a causeless entity. He has no cause because he's independent. But wait a minute, why does the Rebbeinu Shem have a cause? Because we know that the relationship between all phenomenon or events is cause and effect. The effect itself is now a new cause for the next effect. You see, but the Rebbeinu Shem, if he must be, doesn't need a cause. Because there was no time that he did not exist. For a being that must be, right? There was never a time when he did not exist. So if that's the case, there was never a cause. You see. So this is a very important concept, that the fact that he must be means that he's independent of anything, any concept, any idea, any cause. It has nothing to do with him. It's a fundamental attribute of who he is. Now we're up to Hey. Hey, but I'm going to give you Yeah, okay. There are things in this world that are only one of a kind. I was once in France, and I went to Versailles, which is the palace of Louis XIV. If you want to understand what a melech is, you need to go to France. Forget about the White House. The White House compared to Versailles is like an outhouse. You have no idea of what a melech, the power of a melech, the magnificence, the height, the splendor, until you check out what an absolute monarch was. Louis XIV was an absolute monarch. Absolute means it's like Hachashverosh. He's absolute. Means if he didn't like you today and he said you die, you were dead. It didn't need any court, no evidence, nothing. You lived, as they say, at the pleasure of his will. He was up. So I was once in the Palace of Versailles. I mean, the place is unbelievable. It's just, and if I'm not even talking about his gardens were like 100 acres. Gardens, I mean, the palace, Anyway, let me get to that. Anyway, there was a desk in his place. He had a study. There was a desk there. It was a magnificent desk. It had curves and all kinds of things in it. It took the carpenter, they said, 36 years to make that desk. I mean, Louis could pull that off, I mean, everybody else, excuse me, where's my, 36 years, He spent half his life making the desk, I mean, obviously it was a magnificent desk. Okay, so it's obviously one of a kind, because I don't think the guy ever made a second desk. Anyway, so it's one of a kind. So the question is this, that desk is one of a kind. Could there have been a second desk like this? And the answer is yes, of course. If the carpenter had made a second desk, or cabinet maker, whatever these guys are, right? There could be, but there isn't. So that's called relative oneness. It's one in a relative sense. It's one of a kind, relatively, because there is no other desk like this. That's called relative oneness. So my question to you is this. The Baruch Hashem is one. We know that. Echad. But is the Baruch Hashem one because he just happens to be the only God, and boy is he lucky, right? He doesn't have any competition because he happens to be one, right? Or is there something about him that doesn't happen to be one, he's absolutely one, not relatively one, which means that there is it's inconceivable or impossible that there should be two beings with the same nature as God. In other words, is God absolutely one or relatively one? That is the question. And the answer, which everybody would say, is what?
Don't know.
We don't know. Well, he's absolutely one. This is all part of the Kabbalah. I don't mean Kabbalah. Kabbalah means a tradition. This is what all given down at Har Sinai. What does that mean? That means everything else can be replicated, duplicated. There's one of kind of stamps and coins, houses, whatever. But they're all relatively one. The Baruch Hashem is an absolutely one being, means that when we say Echad, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, he is absolutely one, means there cannot be, within the laws of existence, a second being that has the nature of God. Very important idea. There cannot be two gods. At all.
Where is this in the Torah? We have it in the Ramchal
Echad.
Derech Hashem.
Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad.
This is all included. Who says that this is included in that word?
Oh, well, that's the Kabbalah. That's
I mean, he's saying that's Kabbalah. We have it from Tanam, Rishonim, Goinim, Rishonim, other Achronim.
You actually, if you think about it, you can reason it out too. Because if the Baruch Hashem is existence itself, if he's perfect, yes, can there be another being that can be like him? But that means that the Baruch Hashem is imperfect. Because perfect means to have it all. If there was another being like him, he could not control the other being.
You're saying Ois Hey is really included in Beis when he says Shleimus.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So perfection removes the possibility of a competition of another being. Because that's what perfection means. That you cannot have a second being. Or else you would not be perfect. Because that being would interfere. That being would interfere in what? In your abilities. You see? In any case, so the Roshim is absolutely one. That's called Echad. So when we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, He's one, we mean He's absolutely one. There cannot be a second being of that nature, of whatever the Roshim is. And we understand that, because there's only one thing called existence. There are many things that have existence, but a being that is existence itself can only be one. There cannot be two beings that are existence. There's one thing called existence that everybody shares, but there cannot be two beings that are existence. So you already have the idea of the answer. But in any case, so Baruch Hashem is Echad. Now, the Ramchal now talks in Hey, V'chein tzorach sheyeda, shemetziusa yisborach metzius poshet b'li hakov riboy klal. Chol hashlemus, kul mitzorim boy b'derech poshet, pirush, Koiches Rab and so on. Yeah. Okay? We say that the Baruch Hashem is, so therefore that's the first concept of Echad. But there's a second concept of Echad. One. Is that the Baruch Hashem is not only externally one, means there's no other being like him, but he's one internally. The Baruch Hashem is very simple. Poshet. The Baruch Hashem is not complex. What does that mean? Okay, we are composed of over 100 trillion cells. We are very complex beings. Yeah, we're one thing, one person, but we are made up of enormous amount of parts. We are made up of 100 trillion cells. Each cell itself is an entire factory. It's made of trillions and trillions of molecules. And each molecule is made of trillions of atoms. And each atom is made of subatomic particles, electrons, protons, and neutrons. And each particle is made of quarks, until you get down to the modern theory called strings. Therefore, we are looking at infinite amount of parts in a person. Forget about the world. Any given person has almost an infinite amount of parts. We are clearly complex. The Baruch Hashem has no parts. You see, if you walk over to a person or anything, you can cut it in half. You can cut it. Then you can cut that. And you can cut that. See, 1, half, quarter, eighth, 16th, 32, and so on. You can almost infinitely cut things down. You see. So why? Because everything consists of parts. The Baruch Hashem is there are no parts to him. There's only one thing called God, no parts. We can hear it, but we cannot conceive of what that means. We don't understand, what does it mean to have no parts? We don't know. Because everything we encounter has trillions of parts. So we don't know what that means. So therefore, Echad is not only that he's externally one, there's no other being besides him. Internally, he's one. There's no parts. You see? That's a very important idea. Now, from what I said, it would make sense, because whatever existence is, there are no parts. Existence is. It's just something that is just an absolute, not only oneness, but it's just something which is totally simple.
Why is it important to know this?
Because the concept of Echad, you need to know what Echad is.
What are the consequences of knowing that Hashem is simple?
That he's simple? Again, it's called, it's all part of Achdusoi, that there is no being like him, so he's externally one, and also he's internally one. There are no parts. Why? Because he would be dependent on his parts. I mean, some guy can walk over to him and cut him in half.
That's part of the Nitzchias.
It's part of the Shlemus. Because if he consisted of parts, then he could be devoid of that part, and then what would happen to him? You know what I'm saying? Means he would be dependent on his parts, wouldn't he? Right? Because he could remove a part. Right? So that would take away from his Shlemus. So clearly he cannot be composed of parts. You see, he cannot be cut. You can't cut a piece off him because there are no parts. There's only one entity, and that's called God. Again, it flows from a concept called perfection or dependency. See,
Why can't you cut something that's one?
that's one, because then you'd be left with two. Can't be. There's no two. If you can be left with two, that means there was a part. We don't understand what that means,
No,
really.
I'm saying, right, there's no.
Yeah, I mean, we've never encountered something that's an absolute unity or oneness. But that's the problem, because if you cut Rebbeinu, that means you would have to consist of something that allowed parts to exist, even if it's one idea. But the fact that you cut, in other words, there's no quantity in God. There's no quantity. If there's no quantity, then you can't cut it because there's no quantity. It's an absolute. We don't know what that means. But that's the concept of Pashut. That means he's Pashut, he's simple. But not only that, Hashem is simple in more ways. How? We do what? Or imagine if I remember something. So if you remember your grammar, is I the subject, I remember, which is the verb, something, which is what I remember. Three things. There's the subject, the verb, and the object of the verb, the memory itself. I remember something means I have a memory. So there's I, remember, which is an operation, and then there's the object of the verb, the memory itself. How many things are those? Three. Those are three distinct things, right? But they're all included in me. But there's three distinct operations or concepts. The Rebbeinu doesn't remember anything. What does that mean? The Rambam says, the act of remembering and the memory itself is the same thing. There is no he remembers something. God is the act of remembering, and he is identical to the memory itself. There's only one thing. Now in us it's three, in him it's identical. That's called Pashut also. He's simple, you see. So that also, he's not only simple in that there are no parts, he's simple in that there is no separation between him and his actions.
All his action, not just remembering.
All his actions, I just use memory as an example. For instance, God knows something. He is identical.
He created the world. So
yes.
He
creates the world. No. He creates world. It's all one thing, identical. We don't understand what that means. The Rambam says that.
So when we say
we can hear it, but we have no concept what it means.
But his relationship to
That's called, what's the attribute called? Pashut. Pashtus. That's echad. So not only is God externally one where there's no other being, he's internally one, which means what? Is that there are no parts, neither in his etzem or in his operation, doing actions. There are no parts.
So when we
He's
say
absolutely Pashut. There's only one thing called God, and everything is that, is he. We can hear it, we cannot in any way understand what that means. You know, there's no such thing that's outside of God. No such thing. It's all he. That's why I said, how does God know I'm giving the shiur? He doesn't know. God doesn't know I'm giving a shiur. The shiur, all you guys with me, the knowing is all him.
There's levels to that, no?
Was that?
You mentioned before Chelak al Kamal Mamish, right? And then there's things that aren't Chelak al Kamal. But Ramchal knows the zebra, the the Schwarze, and me,
Oh, the Schwarze, yes.
and me, all the same, or this? So what does it mean that Alle Chelik Al Kamal, the zebra isn't, and he's the
Because
Schwarze?
that's Lefi Nivra. Based on our perception, we are different. But there's a reality that we are not in contact with. You know, it's like looking at the microscopic world. You know, until they invented the microscope, who knew anything was below that? You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden they invented a microscope, right? It's called a microcosm. And all of a sudden there are trillions and trillions of things out there, of different bacteria and viruses and fungi and all kinds of stuff, parasites, you name it. And it's all you can't see it. You see? Same thing, you know. The Baruch Hashem is one thing, there's a reality of which we do not comprehend. There are three realities. One is the reality of the physical universe. The second is the reality of the spiritual universe. And then there's the reality of God. God is the reality. We don't know there's no comprehension of that reality. We don't even comprehend the spiritual reality. We don't know what a malach looks like. So forget about knowing who God looks like, because even malachim don't know what God is. That's why they say, I am in Mikon Haritzai. Where's this place that we can praise Him? You see. So, but we can hear the reality, but we cannot mastic what that reality is.
You're saying as far as he's concerned, there's no difference between me and the zebra?
There's no what?
No difference between the zebra as far as he's concerned?
There's no such zebra, as we'll say. There's no such thing as a zebra. We think there's a zebra. You know, what's the ultimate? The ultimate is this, you know, you get married, right? So you think you married a woman. There's no woman. There's no you. There's no marriage. Yet we actually go through a ceremony, and the worst thing is we've got to write out a check after the wedding. You know, you got to pay somebody. There's no check. We actually have to pay somebody for what doesn't exist. I mean, this is like, what, you know, this is a chutzpah ne'roh, right? I got to pay the guy. Nothing is.
Mekach toys.
It's a mekach toys. Yes, it's a mekach toys. I don't know if the caterer is going to accept that argument. You know, it's because he'll say, mekach toys, okay, let me have back my food. You know, and you can tell them the food doesn't exist either.
When it's translated
Anyway,
in
what?
Devarim, when it's translated in Devarim that there was no prophet like Moshe Rabbeinu who knew Hashem face to face. How do you conceptualize that?
Well, I said there was somebody who knew him face to face, but not on a continuous basis. We had him for an instant time, or when 2 mitzvahs now is it, now everybody died, you know. But on a continuous basis, relationship, no such thing.
And who could stay alive?
Was that?
Also that Moshe was able to stay alive.
Yeah, well, you know. But even if, yeah.
But physically there were transformations, right? Became white or something.
Anyway, this is called Pashuk. But it's part of his Echad. So now Echad means two things, doesn't it? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad means that he's the only one externally. There's only one God. One. Two is that this one God is also one thing. No parts. All his faculties are identical to him. So there's one God, no other God. There's one thing, no parts or no complexity. It's an absolute simplicity. And the third meaning of Echad, you know what that is? Moshe Rabbeinu, after Matan Torah, so Moshe Rabbeinu, so the Moshe says, Ato Reis Ladas, you have been shown that you may know. Ki Hashem Elokim, the Moshe is the master of the Lord, Einod Milvadoi. It doesn't say Einod Kamoyu, there's nobody like him. It says Einod Milvadoi. Besides God, there is nothing else. What? What do you mean? There's a whole bria. There's the spiritual universe, and there's the physical universe. So what do you mean there's nobody besides you? You just went through a whole act of creation. So obviously there's a Zulosai, right? There are others besides you. No. There isn't. It's an illusion. The best way I can describe this to you is with the following example. There's a guy sleeping on the couch, and he's dreaming, right? The guy went to lay down on a couch, fell asleep. He's dreaming. In his dream, there are two people sitting at a table and they're drinking coffee and they're having a conversation. This is in his dream. So one guy says to the other guy, while they're talking, says, we don't really exist at all. So the other guy looks at him and says, what are you talking about? There's a table, coffee, we're talking to each other. What do you mean we don't exist? What are you talking about? So the guy says, you don't understand something. We exist relative to ourselves. But compared to the guy sleeping, see, he is, we ain't. He really is. We don't exist, we're a mental image of his. You see, not only that, if he woke up, we instantly disappear. You see. So it comes out like this. It's true that they both exist in some, it's an illusion in his mind, you see. But that kind of couch really is. We in the dream, these two guys don't really exist. Relative to themselves, there's an existence of whatever that is. But it's not real existence at all, you see. It's the same idea. We think we exist, but it's only relative to ourselves. But God is. We do not exist really. But we cannot penetrate that illusion. We cannot penetrate our non-existence, which is a stira minei obey. But really, we don't exist. You know where you see that? Because the Baruch says to the Novi, "Va'ani lo shenisi," I have not changed. What do you mean you've not changed? There's you before the act of creation, and there's you after the creation. You made the bria.
Tzimtzum.
No, but even tzimtzum is a change. There's you means whoever you were before you did anything, and then you called the creator. That's a change. You have a new name. You created them. You brought things into potential, actual. So there's a change in you. But Dosh doesn't say that. Va'ani lo shenisi. I have not changed. Means nothing exists. There is no bria, really. There is nothing but me, even after the bria has been made. So what are you talking about? How could that be? What do you mean? How could we non-exist and even think about our own non-existence? It's an oxymoron. It's impossible. It's a contradiction. But the truth of the matter is nothing is except God, even after the creation, in truth. It's almost like the only being that is has to be existence itself. Whoever has to be given existence doesn't really exist. It's an incredibly mystical idea, but that's what it means. Chaim Volozhin, Nefesh Chaim says, Ein oid milvadoi mamish. And mamish does not mean Menachem Mendel Kessing. If you're Babich. Mamish. Rab Chaim Volozhin says that. Literally, not figuratively or poetically, there is nothing else, really. So the real question is, what do you mean? How could there be nothing else? We exist. Not only that, how could I think I exist? How can that which doesn't exist think it exists? What kind of words are these? You see. But the answer is we cannot penetrate that mystery. In fact, there are malachim that try to penetrate that mystery, the mystery of their non-existence. And right before they're about to penetrate the non-existence, what happens to them? They non-exist. They don't exist. Vanish. It's a non-existential being cannot penetrate the concept of its non-existence.
And this still do?
Because that would be a contradiction in terms. So, in other words, you have to be completely hidden about how you non-exist. Because if you try to approach that, you will non-exist. You see, so these are just words, but the only way I can describe it is that dream. So a guy's going to say, wait a minute, if I don't exist, so why can't I get in the middle of the highway? You see, there's no cars. Cars don't exist. You see, so what's the problem here? But the answer is that a non-existential car can kill a non-existential person. You see?
But there is Torah.
Because in the illusion, one non-existent person can destroy another non-existent person. In the illusion. But that tells us a murdik zach. That concept is called yichud mitziusoi. Yichud mitziusoi. The only one who really is God. We don't exist, really. But in some way, we exist in an illusionary way, which we cannot penetrate. That is one of the main reasons why the Torah begins with Beis. Because a Bria always needs at least two things. God and the being that doesn't exist, that thinks it exists. So there's always two fundamental things going on. It can never be Aleph, you see. It can never be Aleph where there's only God. So therefore, not only is God externally one, and God internally one, God is the only one. That's what Echad really means. Echad has three concepts to it. It's an absolute oneness, or it's a total oneness. He's the only one, there is no other God. He's internally one, there are no parts. He is identical with whatever he does or he is. And he's the only one, really, even after the Bria. We cannot, no being can penetrate that truth.
What was the Gilul Matan Torah?
What?
What was the Gilul Matan Torah?
Oh, very good.
Reality and all that.
Oh, so then the question is, so what type of reality are we dealing with here? That's a very good question. Yes, that's a question that I have to deal with, and so on. But after this, everything has to be dealt with in terms of then what is
After
really.
Harei Soladas, right? Moshe knew this. He said, after Harei Soladas,
Yes. Yes,
he understood that he knows Mavada.
yes.
He knew it, so why didn't he cease to exist? when he
No,
came down?
because you only know it as an idea, but you don't come in contact with that reality. I know something. Listen, I know that Wall Street is making a lot of money. Maybe you give me the money that they're
He
making.
understood this.
Yeah, I mean, an idea has nothing to do with the reality.
It's not
No, you can understand something in terms of an idea, but that doesn't mean you are in contact with that reality. See what I'm saying?
How do you know about the Malachim that they try to contact such a reality? Wait, it's Chazal?
Yeah, I once read it, yeah. It's the Malachim that try to penetrate, and then they vanish.
What does it say?
I forgot.
They have Bechira, to try
Malachim have
anything.
Bechira, yeah, there are Malachim that have Bechira, yeah.
There are Malachim that have Bechira?
Sure, there are higher ones, not the lower ones. That's why Malachim can be punished. There are Malachim that were punished. Remember referral? He said, like, come to cure the city, and he took it on himself. Malachim make mistakes. Malachim have no evil in them, but they do make mistakes.
To the feeling.
Yeah?
To the feeling start off as Malachim.
Yes. Exactly. Anyway, so therefore, we have now penetrated three incredibly important things. One, that Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad means that God is externally one, right? There is no other one, no other God. Two, that there is no such thing as parts or complexity in God. There's a simple thing called God, whatever that is. And the third thing is the only one. That compared to Him, we don't exist at all. In fact, there is no Bria. That's what Alila Shanisi means. There is no Bria at all. Except what the Moshe did do is he created a Bria, right? That is not really, doesn't exist like him, but in some way it does exist. So we're now going to look at the fact that he created what's called a bubble, you see. And he created a whole Bria that
And the
has
bubble is
some...
not part of him?
No, it's external to him.
It's external.
Yes, and that's...
So now instead of being part of him like we said until this tonight, we're external to him.
We are external to him, yeah. And that leads us really...
So why are you saying we're external? I thought it was his illusion. Wasn't he the dreamer on the couch?
He's the one sleeping on the couch and we're in the dream.
So it's part of him. It's part of his thoughts or whatever.
Yes, but...
In what way is it external to him?
No, that there's no external God.
In what way is this bubble external to him?
Well, the bubble is an illusion, but whatever it is not him. Hold that off. Hold
The
that
dream
off.
is part of the person dreaming.
Yes, that's true.
But then what's Einoi Bilvadoi? Everything that exists is him, including the bubbles.
No, Adam Bavad means besides him, there's nothing else. There is nothing else.
So that means the bubble, besides him, there's nothing. Even bubbles there isn't.
Correct. There is nothing. That's
So
the truth of
so
the matter.
bubbles are part of him. And there's nothing external to him.
Listen,
Because he
as I can
occupies
phrase
everything.
it, relative to him, nothing exists and God has done nothing. V'ani lo shanisi means I have not changed. Means relative to God, nothing exists, instead just him, and God has done absolutely nothing. Now, you can say, wait a minute. We seem to exist independent of him, and clearly he has made a whole bria. Yes. We don't understand, we cannot penetrate that mystery of Anilo Shanisi and Einod Bavadai. We don't know what that means. We know what it means, but we cannot penetrate that mystery. All I can tell you, the only example I can give you is like a person dreaming and a dream, relative to that. It's not a good example, it's poor, but it's the only thing I'd say. You see, maybe I could use another example and say, okay, look in the mirror. Who do you see? You see yourself. So would you say the image in the mirror is the same as you? Of course not. You're real. The image in the mirror is an image. It's not, it looks like you, but it's not the same existence as you. That's another mushal that I could use. Either way,
These Mishalim are for our perspective or for his perspective?
from our perspective.
From our perspective, we
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
created through his illusion.
Yes. So therefore, the concept of Shema Yisrael embraces all these three echots. You see.
Listen, the image in the mirror exists, but only it's dependent on
Only if it's what?
it's dependent on the person standing in front of the mirror.
It
Yes.
It does exist.
Yeah.
Sure it exists.
It's a reflection of the person. It exists as a reflection of the person.
Okay, but that's
But
a
it
real
doesn't-
But it's
not
not
more
the
than a
same.
reflection.
It's not the same.
It doesn't have the same
It's not a
quality.
good mushal. There is no exact mushal. I can just say that, just so the enormous difference between two different types of existence. But the truth is that there is no image in the mirror, and there is no dream, really. That's the real mushal.
From his perspective.
Except, I don't know. I don't have any words to describe the nature of our being. I don't know what it is. But it's not him. It doesn't look like him. It's not in any way connected to him in the real sense of the word. So then the real question is, so what in the world and who are we? What's going on here? So for that, you need to wait for next week.
He was hanging in the middle of nowhere.
I will leave you, because it's already 12 o'clock.
For a week we
Give
walk
us a
walk
preview
around
of the
in
next
the
15
days.
minutes. What's
An illusion.
I've been walking around the days my whole life. I mean, what did I tell you? You know?
What?
I don't mind being in the days, that's where I live.
So we'll try to non-exist till another week.
And you said,
Just don't be upset that you don't exist until next week.
well, you said before so that the Rambam that
And I
nothing.
want to tell you something.
You said before that it's not
If
external.
you think,
into the world and see what's
I want to tell you something, if you think
So they did, and they.
that this is
fell through.
problematic,
Wait till next week.
Once they entered the material
But,
being,
you have to-
they became.
Before you're saying that everything is internal on him, who he did say, right? And now you're saying it's internal, it's
No,
external.
the feeling with malachim that was
No,
very
that's-
self-righteous malachim. What's going on?
there's no other God but him.
So we're saying for
Let's
his
see what
idea is
happens to
him,
you.
he remembers.
No,
he
that was
acts-
So they
Pashto,
went
that was the
down,
second echot.
they
The
had
first
contact
echot is there's no other
before they
God
were
but him,
malachim,
one.
spiritual beings.
Second
Once they had
echot
contact
is
with
one
Gashmis,
internally, there's no
the
parts.
Gashmis corrupted them.
He is whatever he is, there's no parts. All his faculties are identical to him. That's Pasha. The third one is the only one, there is nothing else. Really.
And so on the second one, you're saying that when he acts, he is the act and he is the.
Correct.
So, so then we plan to exist because.
No, I didn't get that, I'm just talking about him, the nature of his existence. He is identical to himself in everything he does. There are
The
no-
second is a logical consequence of the third. If he didn't create it, of course the integration is one, there is no creation.
Is deeper.
Well, yeah, he was the only one, yeah, they,
It's like over the
yes,
whole second concept.
they could flow from each other.
So why do you?
So next week,
Same time, yeah.
10:15, same time, Yes. I'm planning, there's a Ramchal's Yortzeit coming up.
Isn't that this week?
This week.
Next Thursday, not this week, but the following week, Thursday evening. So we're planning to make a Ramchal's Yortzeit. It'll be Thursday night, not Saturday night. Yes? Okay, we're gonna be by Beis Kayla. By the way, what's the address of Beis Kayla?
100 Base Kayla Lane is on the corner of Spruce and Vine.
Oh wait, 100 Beis Kayla
It's like a little
Lane?
drive,
Wait, so
but
where's
it's on
it
the corner of
Spruce
Spruce
and
and Vine.
Where's Spruce and Vine?
It's 9 south, you can make a left onto
Left on
onto
Spruce?
Spruce. When you get
How
to
far
the-
down do you have to go on the 9?
Right? Directly opposite Kimball. Kimball will be in your right,
Okay,
you
we'll
make a
speak.
left.
Anyway, so, not this week, but next Thursday night at 9 o'clock, that's where we're gonna start.
Shall we start with Meir or not? I think it might be good.
We'll see, that will be after. At 9 o'clock we'll start. There will be a buffet, what do you call it, smorgasbord? There'll be a full buffet dinner for those who come early. I mean, I don't know if there'll be anything left by 11, 2:30, but buffet, right? Am I right? Right, we got something like that. I just planned, okay. And also, there will be 2 speakers. I will give a shiur for about an hour, and my brother will give a shiur for an hour. It's gonna be a great evening. You guys,
What's he gonna speak about? What are you gonna speak about?
I'm speaking about, because it's Ramchal's Yortzeit, Matan Torah, especially the concept of who is Amalek. Why does God hate Amalek? What is going on here? Because there are many difficulties in that.
And what's he gonna speak about?
And he's going to speak about Edom. Who is Edom? What is Edom? It sounds to be you're not going to be disappointed. So anyway, put that down in your calendar if you want to come. Thursday night of next week at Beis Kayla at 9 o'clock. And also, if you want to invite anybody, to partake of this type of thinking.
How come Malach, like in the film, what happened, how can Malach come? He's not attracted to Gashmias.
Malach, yeah.
The Malach is not, so how could he, like what happened with the film? How could Malach can fall into Gashmias and like...
He doesn't. He puts it's a Gashmias thing, suit of clothing.
Gashmias what?
It's like a suit of clothing, he takes it off. It's not him. He like, you ever see a guy
He puts the clothes
puts it on, yeah. Like,
What's why would he do it?
because you can't see him, you can't talk to him. He's in another realm. There's no way you can contact
And
him.
at that point he becomes like a human being, Mamash?
No, he doesn't become human, but he's able to use the vocal cords of the garb to talk to you. Even though it's like a guy puts himself on a suit.
Oh.
And in the suit he can take all kind of levers, and the suit talks to you, but it's not his voice. You know what I'm saying? Like the Malach with Shimshon, with Manoach and all that. There was a Malach he talked to. It wasn't him.
But why did they do it? Why did they do it?
Because they, for some reason, they have a shlichus to talk to you.
No,
It's a shlichus. Yeah, well.
Oh, film? I thought they made a mistake.
Val, how you doing, Val? Oh, Val, I want to taste.